Bill, he's the former president of the Tuscarawas County NAACP. May not mean a lot now, but back when he was president, the steel mills were booming, the clay plants were booming, and if he had an event, it would be jam-packed. I mean, people everywhere, good speakers. But Bill is going to talk about Juneteenth, and I'm sure he's going to open up the discussion, so if you have questions, feel free to ask him. Bill has a bachelor's degree from Kent State University, and he holds a master's degree from Ashland University. So he knows whereof he speaks. So I hope you enjoy, get some knowledge.
Thank you very much.
All right, Bill.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
This is going to be interactive because I know some people will still have questions. Does anybody know where the term Juneteenth came from?
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
The way I understand it, which could be not totally complete, it's just it was when finally all of the enslaved people all the way even in Texas found out they had been emancipated because they didn't even know. And of course nobody there wanted to tell them. Yeah, they wouldn't have the hotline, so. Enough just that, yeah. Also
And I'm going to repeat myself, but what you said is true, that the June was the month that it happened, and the 19th was the day, and they just squeezed it together to make Juneteenth out of it. Now you'll find out that today, even though we celebrate Juneteenth, today is not the 19th of June, but it's kind of spread out to surround that date. And so what we're going to do today is go forward and backwards and a little bit else. And if you want to stop me to ask a question while I'm going, it's all good. Okay? So what I'm going to start off with is that there was a slave to a man by the name of Cotton Mather. And that slave was named Onesimus. And there's another, if you are Bible scholars, there's another Onesimus in the Bible, but this is a different one. This gentleman, one of the biggest problems they had in the colonies was smallpox. And so Onesimus told his master, Cotton Mather, he said, well, I had smallpox in Africa, but I was treated for it. And his master wasn't really kind of into that. And so Onesimus actually showed them how to inoculate people. And today they do all kinds of shots, but what they did is they just kind of took a little bit of the scab from the smallpox, and they put it in a slight cut on the person who didn't have smallpox, and the body was able to build up a resistance to it. Today, smallpox is the only disease that we've been able to totally eliminate. There's no smallpox anywhere anymore. We were close on a couple, and then we got crazy, and now they've kind of come back again. But smallpox is the only one that does not exist in the population. I understand they have some samples and some labs and things like that, but as far as active, not that way. So what I'm trying to tell you is that even at the beginning of America, black people figured in. It was because of the inoculation that Boston was able to survive their scourge of smallpox because they were able to be immunized. When George Washington heard about this, he sent a general order that all of his troops were to be inoculated because disease killed more soldiers than bullets. It's probably still true, well, maybe not as true today, but in the old days, if you got a wound, you got infection, and a lot of people didn't really relate to germs and all that kind of thing at that point. Go right ahead. So, today I'm going to talk about Juneteenth and beyond. I also want to let you know that out of the first 13 presidents that we had in America, 10 of them were slave owners. That even Ben Franklin, who was part of an abolition movement, at one point in his life, he owned slaves as well. Thomas Jefferson had approximately 600 slaves. And you've already heard about Sally Hemings. Have you heard? Okay. Has anyone not heard about her? Okay. So Sally was a slave to Jefferson, and after his wife died, Jefferson had relationships with her, and today the Jefferson and the Hemings family, they celebrate together because the DNA shows that they are biologically related. So what I want to do today is celebrate all of us. This is a day to celebrate the fact that we all are part of the human family. And the purpose of Juneteenth is just to celebrate our section and contributions to that. And I said it's really important today because right now there's an effort being made to roll back America. There have been women who've been denied promotions because they're women. There have been blacks who've been denied promotions because they're black. They've taken some awards that were given to black soldiers in the Netherlands and removed them. They've taken other things and removed them as well. The object is basically to erase history. Okay? Are you making a comment or you just waving?
I'm saying erase it, that was
And again, what I'm saying is that when we point these things out, I'm not trying to say, well, everybody's a racist. No. I said it and I'll repeat it, that there are enough good people to allow you to dream and enough bad people to wake you up. So the thing I want to do today is say that I wanted to go not to the Revolutionary War, but actually to World War II, because to me, World War II was really what America should have been about. If you talk about blacks, contributions such as the Tuskegee Airmen, 761st Tank Battalion, they were known as the Black Panthers. Most people are familiar only with the Black Panthers from the 60s and that movement. But the original Black Panthers were very instrumental in Europe. And the same with everything, that when you first start talking about it, to me, people talk about DEI. Well, for me, I don't say it the same way everyone else does. For me, it's deliberately encouraging involvement. So that's what that is to me, is deliberately encouraging involvement, because everyone can. People just need the opportunity to participate. You don't really, the idea some people get is if you include women, if you include blacks, you include minorities, somehow you're lowering the bar. And for me, if you know that at one time they said the NBA was no blacks allowed. And today it's nothing but Africans, okay? So you have to understand we've come a long way on this journey. And when we take a look at things, the fact that people want to go ahead and wipe this out, really is not doing any good because you're still failing to address the problems that have existed. People say, well, I never had any slaves, and my dad never had any slaves. But America itself prospered because of slavery. 60% of America's economy was based on the cotton trade. And even though they had slavery, the cotton fibers and so forth, they went to the mills in the north. The products were shipped to England. The whole economy was based on free labor. And so the point I'm making is, no, we're not going to get reparation, basically because people don't believe that we're owed anything. It was like, okay, but I didn't do it, everything's good to go. And recently, they had a Supreme Court case about the Civil Rights Act. And does anybody know what their verdict was in that? They didn't take all of it apart, but they took out Section 2, which basically said what?
Voting rights?
Yes, that you could challenge something if it discriminated racially. Supreme Court said those days are gone. We don't have to have all that stuff now. Everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. Even Clarence Thomas, who's a black man, voted to do away with it. And so the point of it is that when black people were allowed to have housing, it was always restricted. It still is restricted today. If you go where a lot of black people live, especially in the city, it's one on top of the other on top of the other, because there was redlining. You weren't allowed to spread out. Jobs that you should have been able to get, you couldn't get because of the provisions that were there. And I'm going to go to my notes just basically because I'm at that point that I'm going to talk about the black codes. Now, during the Civil War, people thought it was northern states were against slavery and southern states were for slavery. Out of the 15 northern states, 6 of them had black codes. And out of those 6, Ohio was one. Okay? Ohio, their first constitution, Ohio became a state in 1803. Their first constitution in 1804, they put the black codes in. The purpose of it was to keep black people from moving into Ohio. Because today, what is West Virginia used to be Virginia. Virginia used to run all the way to our border. So it was only during the Civil War that West Virginia separated and became West Virginia. That's why a lot of times if you go to West Virginia, they'll say different things and there'll be different notations, but when they're talking about Virginia, they're really talking about West Virginia because it became part of it. So you really have to be knowledgeable in terms of what you're looking at and what you're seeing. When you're looking at the black codes, the main point was to maintain rich white supremacy. Not everybody. When the country was first founded, who could vote?
White men.
All white men? No. Only those didn't own any property, you could not vote. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have to get our signals. I had to get our signals together. Okay. But that's, and today, we're dealing with the same thing. The other day, Elon Musk became the first trillionaire. Which means that he could spend $1 million a day, and it would take him, I forgot how many million years.
3,000 years.
3,000 years just to spend it all.
Yes.
But yet, the average person today is struggling to see if they can pay the bill this month and next month. And they say, well, you don't mind a little sacrifice because we have to make sure that Iran doesn't have all these weapons. But they made a deal, and I suppose this guy knows the art of the deal. But somehow or the other, you're not getting any details of the deal. Because when President Obama was in office, he negotiated the deal with Iran. That deal said Iran would not enrich uranium beyond a certain point, that the International Atomic Energy Agency could come in, regulate, and Iran was following that every step of the way. So when the president came in, what did he do? Ripped it up. Went to war, and they were bragging about our military is the toughest military in the world. He was criticizing Biden for 13 soldiers dead. Strange. 13 Americans got killed in this Iran situation, and hundreds were injured. The point of it is that the slave codes were basically made to make sure that the rich white people stayed rich. And so if you can have the rich people get all the stuff together, then you can pit a little scraps between blacks and whites, or what's left. Right now it's the same thing. The rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. The wealth gap in our country is getting so much wider, and they're bragging about it. The stock market is doing well because the rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. So this all goes back to this thing where it said that if a person was a black person under the slave codes, under the black codes, that they had strict labor contracts, and those were yearly, and you couldn't quit that contract before it was up. Sounds simple, but if you quit before it was up, you would forfeit your wages and you'd be subject to arrest. Then there were vagrancy laws. And you understand that after the Civil War, almost all the jobs were controlled by the rich people. They were not controlled by the average person. So if you didn't give a person a job, they would become a vagrant. So if you were a vagrant, and you were then given a fine, you don't have a job, but you're still going to get fined because you don't have a job. So then, what you're going to do is you're going to pay a penalty, and that penalty will be what? Free labor for some slavery system rolling. And then we have apprenticeship. Young blacks to white employees. It means that even if that young person had been a slave under this gentleman, after the Civil War was over, he could still be bound to that same gentleman who owned that property, even if his parents objected. His parents had no say in it. And there were occupational restrictions, and this is still operated in a similar way today, that blacks were prevented from certain skilled trade jobs. Go ahead, you're good. That when it came to certain skilled jobs, blacks were not allowed to get into those jobs. And they required an expensive tax if you did any work that was not farm work. Most of our families, if we trace our histories back, we go back to sharecroppers. And a sharecropper is basically the same thing as a slave in this sense. Sharecroppers made money, but the money that they made was never enough to repay the money that the property owner lent to them to start their farming. So they were always going to be in debt. So since they're always going to be in debt, it's simply another form of slavery because of the fact that they were kept in that debt due to those circumstances. And if you look around, most people, if you start tracing your ancestry, look for sharecroppers, because that's a very same thing that's just free labor. Also, I guess I'm just going to disregard my notes. I'll do it every now and then. But also, after the Civil War, probably the worst thing that happened was the assassination of Lincoln. Because President Lincoln, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which means what? What's Emancipation Proclamation? He issued that. Actually, it took effect in 1863. He actually wrote it up before that, but he was waiting for what?
A victory.
He was waiting for a victory. Once he got that victory, then he could go ahead and initial that. And as I said, it wasn't a simple thing that all the North wanted no slavery and all the South wanted slavery. The North wanted slavery, but what's the one thing that we generally have in the North that they don't have in the South? Snow. Snow. And in the wintertime, if you had slaves in the North, you'd have to feed, clothe, and shelter them while you're not getting any production. But in the South, you can run crops all year round. General Lee said the biggest weapon that was used against the South was their black population. Because the slaves, they had to run errands here, run errands there. They knew all the shortcuts and everything else. And so when the Union troops came down, they were able to say, you can go here, you can go there. And he said that the Negro population was the thing that defeated them because they could give them information. So much for dumb people. And the thing I'm saying also is that when General Sherman, other generals were going, they would attract former slaves. Why? You're with somebody who's trying to defeat the people that are trying to keep you down, and they have weapons to protect you. And so you would have a lot of contraband, as they're called, to follow them. And so someone said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Somewhere towards freedom." Don't know where I'm going, but I'm going toward freedom. And so they became such a hazard for Sherman and some of the other generals that Sherman decided to meet with some black pastors. And they said, what can we do for you? He said, give us some land. Give us some area to call our own. Then we won't have to keep traipsing after you. And so Sherman issued that what? 40 acres. And sometimes people got a mule, but the basic thing was 40 acres. How many people know the approximation of an acre? An acre is about 3/4 of a football field. And so if you talk about 40 acres and you do 3/4, it would be about 30 football fields worth of property. Okay? And if you had a mule, you had a good start. They're coming from slavery, they didn't have anything else that they could count on their own. And this is where the sharecropping system came in, because, oh, I see you got a nice piece of land there. Too bad you don't have any seed to plant on there. But I'll tell you what, I'll give you some seed, and then you can pay me back. But the contract was always, as I said, more than what they could earn off the fields that they were planting, and that's why it was a continual thing, and it made it so bad. So once this was done, then things happened. Booth shot Lincoln, and they thought, well, Booth thought he would be a hero, but the South said, not going to happen. Not going to happen because, the North said it's not going to happen because they really felt that Lincoln was trying to pull everything together. And the South too, I guess, because the South, I think they felt that they would get a better deal because the other Republicans were really upset with them for starting the war and then eventually for killing Lincoln. We get into a discussion about Republicans and Democrats. Just to clarify, when Lincoln became president, he was what party? He was the Republican Party. And the Republican Party was dedicated to ending slavery. When Lincoln was assassinated, his vice president, who was Andrew Johnson, was also a Republican, but he was from Tennessee. What he wanted was revenge, because all those people that picked on him because he stayed with the Union while the rest of the South was gone, okay, how you like me now? I'm the president now. So, just kiss the ring, give you citizenship back the way it was. The majority of the Confederate leaders went back into the United States government. They proposed laws to get rid of attempts to improve the lives of black people. And eventually, you'll get to a point where you'll see that not only did they use the laws, but they also, there's a man by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest. Anyone familiar with him? What is it?
Well, he was the head of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yes, yes. He was the head of the Ku Klux Klan, and just recently, in Mississippi's, one of their courthouses, they found some Ku Klux Klan memorabilia. There are a lot of our politicians who even though they were not saying that they were with the Klan, were actually with the Klan. And some of the people that fought the hardest had ties to the Klan. There were even some Supreme Court justices who had relationships to the Klan. So as far as things being good to go, you're being attacked politically, economically, racially, you name it. We're up against it. And as I said, Juneteenth was good because it was a celebration of freedom. But it was only freedom to try to have the American life. It wasn't a guaranteed life. And in America, we take turns doing this ebb and flow. You get an improvement. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are known as the Civil War Amendments. And they basically were formed to counter the activities of the Klan. 13th, citizenship. 13, no slavery. It's kind of a funny thing because everybody says, well, didn't the Emancipation Proclamation do away with slavery? Well, the president can't do away with slavery. The Congress has to do it. So that's why you had the 13th Amendment to do away with slavery. The 14th Amendment is citizenship. Now, despite what the president says, citizenship was not for slaves because at that point there was no slavery when they were adopted. So, and then the 15th is voting. And today you see the same attempts to disenfranchise people, to not allow them to vote. And in the latest Supreme Court case, what you've seen is you've seen that what they're doing is trying to take people's right to vote away. And as I said, these minority black districts were set up because blacks had no representation. Just to give you a clue, South Carolina and Mississippi were the two first states to secede from the Union. If you look at their population, blacks were 54 and 55% of the populations of those states. So if they let black people have the right to vote, things of that nature, oh boy, things are going to get mighty hectic up in here. So we can't allow that to happen. That's why all this happened. And during this Reconstruction period, you have people that they came in and they're like, okay, we're gonna make things better. And the Union put the Army in for a while. And President Grant, when he was president, he was trying to, I said, as a military man, the military saw things firsthand. They saw that people were intelligent enough to tell them how to go do different things. It's just that they were not allowed to. It's the same thing today. When people talk about DEI, people are very capable, all their vote. But since things are still getting sorted around, there were 3 southern states that their votes were in dispute. Basically, Hayes made a deal. If you give me your votes, I will take the Union troops that I have and move them out. When he moved the Union troops out, that's when something hit the fan. Okay? And so from that point on, that's where you get really a lot of the violent things that happen.